shows that we have publications that you can access and get familiar or get to know what the State Department is doing. Last slide. That is the end, and I want to thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, PS. Another round of appreciation. So now we will have a presentation, the opening remarks by the PS and presentation on the macroeconomic outlook for the 26-25 budget. Welcome, PS. Please help me welcome the PS National Treasury.
Thank you, Albert. Cabinet Secretary, Honorable John Bali, Honorable Atandi, who is the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, my colleague PSS, and all the participants this morning. Good morning. I'm Jambo. My remarks will be by way of a presentation, and I intend to use 20 minutes to do this presentation. So, may I say all protocol observed. Let's go to the first slide, which is the outline of my presentation. That is, I have 7 items to cover. And let's now go to the next slide. As usual, we like to contextualize our budget making process within the global developments. So in this slide, we are indicating that global economy has averaged about 3.5% in the last 3 years, from 2022 to 2024. And this, you are looking at the period after the COVID-19 recession, but we have seen uneven recovery because of, for instance, the Russia-Ukraine war that ended up causing increase in commodity prices. We also have issues in the Middle East and other geopolitical risks. So that slide is really showing the advanced economies is the one on blue. Then we have sub-Saharan Africa and emerging markets. You can see more of this in the next slide. So you can see that average growth in 2023 for the world economy was 3.5. 24 it came to 3.3. 2025, 3%, and we are projecting an increase, slight recovery in 2026. You can see also the rest. For the advanced economies led by US, Euro area, and Japan. And then we have indicated in the emerging markets, China and India. Then for sub-Saharan Africa, you can see also a growth rate of around 4%. We have also highlighted Kenya and Nigeria as examples. Because this slide will be available to you, I really want to move to the next slide. And this is about Kenya. And the story here is that if you look at that cycle there that shows Kenya, that indicates that Kenya's highly diverse economy with a growth of 4.7% in 2024. You can see that we have a very diversified economy. There is no sector that really is dominant over the other. Of course, agriculture remains the leading economy, the leading sector with 22.5%. But you can see transport and storage takes a share of 12.7%. Real estate is 8.4%. Financial and insurance sector is 7.9%. Wholesale and retail trade, 7.5%. You can see manufacturing is 7.3%. We need to see this double. Our aspiration is to really have more manufacturing, share of manufacturing in our GDP. The rest you can see. So we have a diversified economy. That is why when we have shocks, we always recover quickly because of that diversified nature of our economy. You can see in the lower part that real GDP has been growing from 2018, it was 5.6, it came down to 5.1, then we had the COVID period, then a recovery in 2021, of course, because of the base effect, but then 2022, 4.9, then 5.7, but last year it came down, and I think you all remember we had a challenge around June because of the budget, and we had riots in the country, which led to slowdown in economic activities. But we have picked up, and that is why on the slide that you see there on the right side, we are indicating that economic growth was 4.9 in the first quarter of 2025. And you can see that all the sectors grew. All the sectors grew, with the fastest sector being agriculture at 6%. And again, because of time, let's go to the next slide. You have gone to another presentation. That's not my presentation. Yes, that's one. Okay, so next slide. So this is the macroeconomic indicator on inflation. We have done very well on containing inflation. You can see here that the latest number is 4.1% in July. And you recall we had brought inflation down to up to 2.7%, from as high as 9.6% in October 2022. So generally, because this has been achieved mainly because of monetary policy tightening, and in fact, in the last few months, we have seen central bank ease monetary policy, and the CBR rate has actually been reduced from 13% to now about 9.5%. Next slide. I have to rush because of time. We have shown you some items which I think PS Planning had also tried to bring out. We are saying here that in November, for instance, 2023, a kilogram of sugar was costing 218 shillings. And that in July this year, 2025, it was costing 187 shillings. So we have seen a reduction of about 33% in the cost of 1 kilogram of sugar. The same thing for hunger, grain and flour. We have seen about 20% decline. Same thing for electricity. You can see decline of around 17%. And even 1 liter of petrol is now 15% down from what it was there. In 1 liter of diesel is also 18.5% down in terms of cost. So cost of living has largely been addressed. I think this was one of the major objectives that this government had set up when it came to power. So let's go to the next slide. These are interest rates. Because of bringing down of inflation, we have also seen interest rates come down. And the interbank rate has now come to 9.6%, when compared to a year ago, which was 13.2%. And for Treasury bill rates, we have seen this halved. We had 16% in July 2024. This year, in July, we have had 8.1. In fact, last Thursday, the 91 Treasury bill rate was 8%. And this week, we expect that it's going to be below 8. And we are determined to work with central bank to make sure that we have a low regime of interest rates in Kenya. So as a result of this decline in interest rates, lending rates have picked up to 17.2%. Of course, let's go to the next slide. I think that will give us better story. You can see that from July 2024, February, credit to private sector had come down. And it came down because monetary policy was tightened and interest rates were going up. But as soon as central bank started easing monetary policy, you can see that credit has recovered. Credit to private sector has recovered. And you can see from a decline of 2.9 to now 3.3. And we expect that more credit to private sector will be realized with continued easing of monetary policy by the central bank. Next slide. On the external sector, I have 10 minutes. On the external sector, the current account has remained stable at 1.5% of GDP. And what has made it easy for us to achieve this good performance in the current account? First, our exports have done well. The exports of goods have done well. They have grown by 7.7%. Exports of services have also gone up, especially for tourism and for transport and travel. For our goods, you have seen coffee, horticulture, and even tea prices, they have really gone up. And then remittances have increased. Our people in diaspora have done us great, because now we are receiving about 5.084 trillion. It's actually about $5.1 billion in the last 12 months. And then we have seen goods imports have risen by about 9.9%. But overall, the current account is still stable. And the official reserves over this period have grown. And now, as we speak, we are talking about $11.9 billion of foreign exchange in our central bank. And this has raised the months of import cover to 5.2 from 3.8 months of import cover in the same period just 1 year ago. Next slide. The shilling. Our shilling has remained very stable. You can see from February 2024, we had a lot of pressure on the shilling, and it was going to 160, over 165. There were even predictions that it would go to 250. And all that was because of the fear that we would not be able to settle the maturing 2 billion euro bond that was due in June last year. But we took a decisive action by going to the market with an issuance and a buyback of 1.5 billion of that 2 billion. And that really de-risked the market, because you can see from then on, exchange rate has appreciated, and we have maintained it at around 129 to 130 for now almost 2 years. I think this has really brought in stability. And next slide. So the final part of this, before I go to the last, the part of presentation, which is for budget, is that even in our capital markets, we have seen very good progress. You can see that because of the economic recovery, because of stability in the exchange rate, and general macroeconomic stability, we have seen FDI, foreign direct investments, increase, and we have seen investors attracted to our Nairobi Stock Exchange. So you can see the index of the NSE has improved by over 50%. You can see the indicators there, 53% increase from 2,559 points in July 2025 from 1,670 points in July 2024. And market capitalization has also gone up by an equivalent 53% from 2.5 trillion, that is, no, from 1.65 trillion in July last year to 2.5 trillion in July this year. I now move to the part on budget performance, which is relevant to today's meeting. And I would like to say that we had total revenue collection by end of June 2025 that amounted to 2.93 trillion, against a target of 2.985. So we had a shortfall of about 62 billion. And this is overall revenue. But when we look at ordinary revenue, we had a shortfall of 76. And total revenues grew by 8% compared to a growth of 14.5% in the previous year. While ministerial A&A actually did well and went up by 14 billion. So fiscal deficit as percent of GDP was 5.8%. This was slightly higher than what we targeted, if you recall, because of the challenges that we faced. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the table that shows performance of revenues. In the fiscal year 23-24, you can see total revenue grew by 14.5%. In this year, it grew by 8%. And you can see the various categories of ordinary revenue, import duty, excise duty, income tax, VAT, and others. The story here is that we underperformed mainly because of, especially in all major tax heads, except for import duty and VAT. So, and I think you go to the next slide, we go to expenditure. This is how expenditure performed. You can see our target was, by the way, I need to say we had to do 3 supplementary estimates in this year that has just ended. We did the first one as soon as Parliament passed the finance bill, but which we had to bring back the budget to Parliament because the President decided not to assent to the then finance bill, given the reactions that Kenyans had given. So we did another supplementary later, and the third one, which you see here. So the target for supplementary 3 was 4 trillion, but our preliminary expenditure shows a decline, a deviation of 75 billion. And you can see those categories. Domestic interest rate is higher than our target, and foreign interest rate is low because this time around we didn't receive as much from the foreign foreign funding. And pension and CFS also, you can see there, our estimates were lower by about 14 billion. Let's go to, I think I need to say one thing here. This, unlike the previous years, we did very well this time around because we managed to pay all exchequer requests which were before us. We did not have carryover effects from the previous year. So as we cross to this fiscal year of 25-26, we have paid all counties their dues, including the arrears of 1 month that we had. We also did the same for CDF. We have paid all ministries, all departments, and I think if we maintain this, then we will be addressing the issue of pending bills, because at least this time around we don't have pending bills that we have carried over because we managed to settle all the requests. Now, next slide. So, what remains the fiscal risks? As we move forward, we still have a challenge. We have emergency interventions that came, like drought and floods. Sometimes we have, of course, collective bargaining agreements that were not factored, so sometimes there are shortfalls, given that we may have made recruitments and we have had to adjust salaries to make sure that we address those recruitments and in cases of CBS that have been agreed. Sometimes we have increased insecurity that leads to higher budgets, and many others, including the cash transfer program now that has become expensive because of a larger population of Kenyans that deserve to be treated under this cash transfer program. Next slide. I really don't want to deal with so many of those. You can read and you can address them, you can look at them later. Next slide. So this is the summary of the fiscal performance in 24-25 and the budget for 25-26. You can see our budget for 24-25 was 3.3 trillion. But by the time we did a supplementary 3, we had scaled it down to 2.95. We had to do this because of the fact that the economy was not doing well, and we wanted also to be more realistic, because sometimes we think we have been too ambitious when it comes to projections. So this time we said we need to stick to a lower number. And you can see the outcome was a deviation of only about 76 billion. So this year, we are 25-26, we are targeting 3.3 trillion, which is the same target that we had for last year. But so this is also a more realistic target. The same thing for expenditures. You can see we are now targeting 4.3 trillion for fiscal year 25-26. And we are hoping to settle at a 4.7% GDP in terms of fiscal deficit. Next slide. So what are the macroeconomic assumptions that underlie the fiscal framework going forward? We are expecting that our GDP will grow by at least 5.3% over the medium term. And we expect agriculture to continue driving the economy, and also the services sector and the other sectors that you saw in the earlier presentation. We also expect to continue enjoying favorable weather that will drive agricultural productivity. We expect to maintain inflation low and stable within the target of central bank. Interest rates are also projected to remain low. We expect our shilling to remain stable, and we expect revenues to grow from about 17.7% to 18.1%. Of course, that 18 is much lower than what we have projected in the medium-term revenue strategy. And then expenditures are projected to decline to around 21.5% over the medium term. Let's go to the slides now that I want, as I finish. CS, we have, go back. I want Kenyans to take note of that. Shrinking fiscal space. This is the reality that we have now. Let's show in the next slide. You can see that the green is showing that revenues have been growing, and one can say impressively. You can see from 2010 to 2011, our revenues were 609 billion. Today we are talking about 2.4 trillion. But the red one, that red is showing the growth rates. And you can see that the growth rates have been declining. Every annual growth rates have been declining in terms of revenues. So as we move forward, we are not generating enough revenues as we should. Yet we have a different story when it comes to expenditure. Expenditure pressure is high. So if we cannot manage, the revenues are coming not as much as we want, the revenues are going up, it means we will have to finance the budget through deficits. And I will be showing you that deficits are things we cannot expect going forward because the debt levels have gone too high. Next slide. So this is what I was saying, that ordinary revenues have declined. You can see from 2023, we had around 18% of GDP. And as we speak, the latest is around 14%. So there is one thing I want to say here, that they have the tax compliance gaps have continued to increase. We have increased tax expenditure. Now about 500 billion is being used as tax incentives. Then we have also growth in sectors like agriculture, where we are not driving much of the taxes from those sectors which are growing. But one thing I want you to take notice is that CFS, this is interest rates and pension, is taking up now 48.5% of ordinary revenue. So of revenues that we collect, almost half of it is going to just pay loans and other obligations. And you can see this was 16% in 2023. So over 10 years, it has gone up to almost 50%. You can project, if we continue like this, the next 10 years, it means we'll literally be collecting to pay our obligations, and that's not the best thing. Over the same time, you can see that GOK-funded development projects have declined. Now, instead of the 21% we used to enjoy, we are now, only 9.2% of our budget is going for development. And that is not what we want, because the people are growing up and their development needs are increasing. So next slide. This is expenditure trend. You can see that red slide is showing recurring. Recurring is taking a large share. But overall, the good story is that as percent of GDP, expenditure is generally declining. And this is what we would like to see. Next slide. So we really ask for fiscal reforms. And we are going to be focusing on this. I believe CS will emphasize that. Let's go to those slides. We want to reverse this trend of reduction in revenue to GDP. So you see on this side, the right side, we want to reverse this trend by moving revenue as percentage of GDP to 18% and even to 20% as indicated in our medium-term revenue strategy. Next slide. So how do we want to do it? We will implement our tax policy that is in place, and also tax administration measures as indicated in the medium-term revenue strategy. And on tax administration, we want to really look at efficient collection of revenue and also seal leakages. And here, KRA has really moved to do automation, and digitization to enhance tax compliance and expand the tax base. We are going to work hard also to minimize tax expenditure. And we want to focus also raising more tax revenue. Next slide. On expenditure, we really want to focus a lot on rationalizing and reducing non-essential expenditures, prioritizing ongoing reforms. I know my time is up, and I need to give the chance to the other speakers. We have end-user e-procurement, and I think CS will speak to this. E-procurement is what we are relying on to really contain our expenditure. We have a unified payroll system. Now we want to unify what we call human resource information system with IFMIS, and to make sure that there are statutory deductions so that as we pay salaries, simultaneously KRA gets their payee, SHA gets the SHA, and NSSF and all that are recipients of statutory deductions get on time. Next slide. So public finance management reforms. We have moved now to accrual accrual accounting basis from cash basis from this financial year onwards. We have continued to implement zero-based budget. We have also gone to single treasury account so that we improve our cash management, and we have optimized our asset utilization through a module called assets and inventory management, so that all ministries will have in IFMIS their assets and other inventories. Then the last thing is that we are doing SOE reforms, where we have mergers, we have dissolutions and restructuring and declassifications. A lot of this will be achieved after the passage of the SOE bill that is in Parliament, and also the privatization bill that is in Parliament. Next slide. So I want to finish by indicating this. You can see that we have, for a while, ran widening budget deficit. I think the highest was 8.3. That red line that you see, 8.3% there. I want you to pay attention to the green line, what we call primary balance. We had achieved up to around 0.1% of primary balance. So I think, next slide. This is the last slide, CS, as I invite you. This is the budget, public debt. Public debt, you can see as percent of GDP, the present value of debt had risen up to 65%, but now has come down to about 64%. Because of time, let me stop here and invite Honorable Honorable Atandi, sorry, so that he make your remarks, and then we invite the CS. Just because of time, I know there's a live coverage, and we need to make sure the CS has time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, the CS, the PS, Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, John Badi, Principal Secretary for National Treasury, Dr. Chris Kipto, and all the other PSs who are present here, members of Parliament, government officials, and all the invited guests. Good morning. I want to be very brief, and thank you very much, Bonas PS, for your presentation. I think you've taken care of most of the items I wanted to talk about. But let me begin by saying that it is an honor for me to address you this morning for the launch of the sector working groups for the financial year 2026-2027 and the medium-term budget preparation process. This occasion marks a pivotal moment in our collective effort to craft a budget that drives Kenya's development agenda while also addressing domestic and global economic realities. The budget preparation process is a cornerstone of our governance enshrined in the Constitution and the Public Finance Management Act 2012, and also guided by Chapter 12 of the Constitution, Sections 35 and 36 of the Act. We undertake this process with a commitment to transparency, accountability, and robust public participation. The sector working groups launched today are tasked with aligning our fiscal priorities with the aspirations of Kenyans, ensuring that resources are allocated efficiently to deliver transformative impact. Our expectations as Parliament is that for the financial year 2026-2027, the budget will support bottom-up economic transformation agenda through targeted development expenditure in critical sectors such as agriculture, health, education, and infrastructure. These investments are essential to empower households, create jobs, and foster inclusive growth of our people. However, like has been acknowledged by the PS, we must acknowledge that there's a concerning trend where actual development expenditure has declined significantly from over 640 billion in 2020 financial year to approximately 500 billion by the end of financial year 2024-25. This decline has aggravated by in-year revisions due to low absorption of development partner projects, slow exchequer releases, and other project implementation challenges. I urge National Treasury and the sector working groups to be cognizant of these issues when setting up development priorities by addressing bottlenecks in project execution and improving coordination with development partners. We can ensure that allocated funds are fully utilized to maximize impact on priority projects aligned, and also align them with fourth medium-term plan for Vision 2030. Honorable Minister, this is a concerning trend, and I think it has also been highlighted by the PS. I want to say that one of the areas that is going to affect budget implementation for this financial year is now what we call e-procurement. I know e-procurement is important, necessary, and it is promising to also help us, manage our budget process better. But from the information we have received from the departments and ministries, the slow, uptake of this e-procurement is going to affect development, rolling out of development projects. And I want to urge National Treasury to ensure that this process is fast-tracked and the bottlenecks that are currently prevailing are managed properly. We also face significant pressure from interest payments on public debt, and I also just want to urge that this financial year we are going to pay up about 1 trillion in interest in debt. And the sector working groups must balance the need to meet these debt obligations with sparing resources for critical development. As you plan your budgets, please note that the physical space is shrinking, as has been explained, and it is not a secret that this is a reality which you must be able to must be aware of it. National Treasury, in collaboration with Parliament, must consider innovative financial mechanisms such as public-private partnerships in sectors including energy, transport, irrigation, and housing, so that we avoid over-reliance on exchequer for development projects. To ensure fiscal stability, Parliament has given priority to realistic revenue projections, and we are targeting 2.7 trillion in this financial year in ordinary revenue. These achievable targets will reduce uncertainties in budget implementation and minimize unplanned borrowing. The sector working groups should ensure that the leverage on advanced tools such as upgraded IFMIS system, budget costing tool to align expenditure plans with those projections, ensuring that efficiency and reducing reliance on supplementary estimates. Bonasias, we are not very happy with so many supplementary estimates. We think that many supplementary estimates are affecting the rollout of development programs. We want to urge National Treasury and the sector working groups to ensure that this financial year we avoid those supplementary estimates so that the budget is implemented as passed. In the previous years, National Treasury indicated plans to implement zero-based budgeting. However, for the year 2025-2026, Parliament has not observed evidence of this application in submitted estimates. Additionally, several other measures and reforms aimed at controlling expenditures over the medium term, boosting efficiency, transparency, and accountability are yet to be fully implemented. These include migrating to a Treasury single account to consolidate public funds, transitioning to accrual accounting for enhanced financial reporting, and deploying public investment information system. Even though the PS has made a wonderful presentation on application of these reforms, as Parliament, we think that these reforms have not been activated sufficiently, and we are looking at this financial year to see that these reforms are actually, working. I want to urge the sector working groups to fully embrace zero-based budgeting for the financial year 2026-2027, ensuring that its application is evident in the budget estimates table by April 30th, 2026. This approach will ensure that every expenditure is justified, inefficiencies are eliminated, and resources are allocated to high-priority programs. Parliament, through a resolution of Budget and Appropriations Committee, has directed the Intergovernmental Technical Relations Committee to unbundle all devolved functions still being implemented by the national government. This directive aims to curb unnecessary duplication of functions between the national and county governments, particularly in the health, agriculture, water, and other sectors. Honorable CS, we have been undergoing painful mediation exercise between the National Assembly and the Senate over Division of Revenue Bill. And Honorable CS, we know that there's no really big room for us to continue to transfer more resources to the counties. So the only option left for us is to ensure that all those functions that are currently being handled by national government and should be devolved, they need to be done quickly so that we avoid this painful fighting over transfer of more resources. We expect Division of Revenue Bill 2026 to incorporate provisions to guarantee that counties are allocated devolved resources that are presently held by the national government in a manner that is appropriate. I urge the National Treasury and sector working groups to ensure that national government resources are prudently allocated, avoiding overlaps with county functions. This alignment will ensure that service delivery, optimize resource use, and strengthen our devolved system of governance as envisioned in the Constitution. Addressing pending bills, Honorable CS, remains a critical focus as these have constrained liquidity for businesses, particularly small and medium enterprises. The pending bill verification committee is auditing bills accumulated from the 2005 to 2022, and clearing this will inject liquidity into the SME sector, which supports over 60,000 enterprises and millions of jobs. The sector working groups must give priority and allocate resources to expedite this process, fostering economic growth and building trust in our public finance system. Honorable CS, public participation is the heartbeat of our budget process. I call upon the sector working groups to engage actively with citizens, civil society, and the private sector during the upcoming public sector hearings. These platforms will ensure that the budget for financial year 2026-2027 reflects the priorities of all Kenyans. The adoption of zero-based budgeting this year further underscores our commitment to scrutinizing our expenditure, eliminating inefficiencies, and maximizing value for money. Honorable CS, you remember that for the last 2 financial years, there has been conflict between Parliament and the budget as tabled by National Treasury. I tend to think that if we enhance public participation better, then going forward we are not going to see conflict where the budget presented in the National Assembly is altered, or changed by members of Parliament. I think this is something that we are committed to ensuring that we have a budget that is properly aligned and that there's no conflict during the budget making process. Thank you. I have 1 minute. In closing, I would like to give gratitude to the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning, Principal Secretaries, and all stakeholders for their support in this process, and to ensure that we craft a budget that reflects our vision for a stronger, more inclusive country. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause to the chairman of the Budget Committee. It's now my pleasure and honor to invite our team leader at the National Treasury, Honorable FCPA John Badi Ngongo. Can we all be upstanding for him, please? Karibu sana.
Thank you. Thank you. We can have our seats. I hope the standing was to break the monotony, but not for me. Thank you, PS. I think a lot has been said, so I'll in a few minutes give my official speech, And then if you allow me, then I will give what may sound as off-the-cuff remarks, but generally to give a summary of the performance of our economy and generally where we need to go to, or what we are trying to do to make sure that our economy is sound. So the principal secretary is present here today, including my three principal secretaries, Chris Kipto, Boniface Makoha, and of course Odede. The other principal secretaries present and other counting officers, Chairperson, Budget and Appropriations Committee. I don't see representation from Council of Governors. I don't know whether there is any in the room. Commission on Revenue Allocation was also supposed to be represented. I am not sure whether there is representation from that commission. I know there are development partners. I salute you. The private sector representatives, the civil society representatives, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's with great honor that I stand before you today to officially launch the sector working groups, which is a pivotal step in our national budget and planning process for the fiscal year 2026-2027 and the medium term. This initiative is integral to our broader strategic framework, which is aimed at ensuring economic sustainability of economic growth, social development, and effective public service delivery. I recently issued guidelines on the preparation of the financial year 2026-2027 and the medium-term budget in accordance with Article 220 of our Constitution and Section 35E and then Section 36 of the Public Finance Management Act. It is further to these guidelines that we are here today to launch the 2026-27 and medium-term budget preparation process. So, ladies and gentlemen, the financial year 2026-27 and medium-term budget, which we are launching today, is being prepared within the context of a global economy that is facing significant challenges due to the following factors. One, rising trade barriers across the globe, financial tightening, and policy uncertainties which threaten growth prospects. Further, we are also faced with persistent risks which include trade policy escalations, cautious consumer and business behavior, intensification of geopolitical tensions, and sustained high inflation, potentially exceeding expectations. However, reversing trade restrictions early could stimulate growth and mitigate inflationary pressures. I am mentioning this because you have seen the unpredictability of the issues of tariffs between the two leading economies, which basically dictates where our economic growth would go. So on the global scene, as my peers has mentioned, the growth is expected to moderate at 3% in 2025 from 3.3% before slightly improving to 3.1% in 2026. In sub-Saharan Africa, again, that has been spoken to by my peers. I don't want to repeat. However, the growth outlook is supported by factors such as increased private consumption, ongoing public investment in infrastructure, and a gradual revival of the services sector, particularly tourism, in our economy. However, several risks could impede this growth trajectory, which include spillovers from global trade disruptions, declining external demand, volatility in commodity prices driven by geopolitical tensions, and limited fiscal capacity in many countries, which may lead to tighter financing conditions. Our economy is expected to recover in 2025. I think my peers spoke to last year's economic growth, which was lower at 4.7%. In the first quarter of this year, we have seen a rebound at 4.9%. We expect better performance later, although we had a challenge with the demonstrations and riots that took place end of June and beginning of July. But we expect a better performance in the last quarters of the year. And so our focus is to have a 5.3% economic growth, which is supported by agricultural, strong agricultural and manufacturing sector. Our manufacturing sector has shown very clear signs of recovery, together even with mining sector, which underperformed last year, mining and minerals. So we are also expecting a robust service industry, macroeconomic stability, ongoing public investment, and high business confidence. And the public investment is mostly in the construction sector and the road sector as well. However, Kenya's economic outlook still faces both external and domestic risks. Further, extreme weather may negatively impact agriculture, infrastructure, and food security. So the government is monitoring these risks closely and will therefore take necessary measures to safeguard macroeconomic stability. Our recent fiscal experiences have been instructive. One, the withdrawal of the 2024 Finance Bill last year compelled us to forego additional revenue measures, prompting implementation of austerity measures that prioritize essential social sectors such as education, health, and social protection. In fact, last year was the most, I think, challenging year in the recent past, apart from the COVID years. Why? Because apart from losing revenue-raising measures which the government had factored in their plan, there were a lot of expenditure pressures that came from the health sector, where we adopted a new system of funding our healthcare program from October last year. And again, we also had a lot of challenges in the education sector. The collective bargaining agreements were, their implementation phase just began last year. So there were issues with COPET, NAT. We also had issues with the lecturer strikes. There were a lot of challenges, but I'm happy that we were able to surmount those challenges. So these measures, though challenging, reinforce the importance of financial judiciousness and resource economization in our governance framework. I therefore direct all MDS to ensure that the fiscal prudence and resource optimization we instituted are sustained and embedded in our culture of public service. So in the upcoming budget, will be anchored on in the fourth medium-term plan and aligned with the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. The strategic focus remains on fostering economic growth through the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, emphasizing on inclusive development. So in this regard, our focus will still remain the 5 pillars: agricultural transformation, MSMEs, housing and settlement, healthcare, and digital infrastructure, which includes creative economy investments. For our fiscal framework, we are structuring our fiscal framework around key targets, which include GDP of 5.3%, inflation maintained at the midpoint with plus or minus 2.5%. We are also anchoring our framework on the projection that we will realize 17.2% of GDP in terms of revenue collection. The other projection is that we will be able to maintain our expenditure below 22.2%, down from 22.7%. The other assumption is that our fiscal deficit will be reduced. Remember, in 2023-24, the fiscal deficit was 4.7. But then in 2024-25, the year that ended, that rose to 5.8. It may be looked at as a negative, but I will tell you that if you consider other factors, we are 4.7%, but with a carryover of 218 billion, which is about 1.3% of GDP. If you add, that is the carryover of what we were supposed to have supported or released exchequer to, which includes county governments, 31 billion, 26 billion that was supposed to go to pensions, and there was also CDF, 13 billion, and MDAs unfunded exchequer requests of over 158 billion. If you add all that, that was 1.3% of GDP. If you added that to 4.7, you are at 6% of GDP. So in real terms, 2023-24, we should have closed by a budget deficit of 6% of GDP. I am happy to announce that the 2024-25, we closed the year with no carryovers. That the counties, we released all the exchequer requests to counties, including the arrears for 23-24. That we also released the exchequer requests for CDF, including the carryover of 13 billion. And we managed to settle all the pension requests that were processed. And we transferred exchequer requests to MDS almost in total. So then it means that our performance in 2024-25, in my view, in terms of budget deficit, it was better than 2023-24. So in recent financial planning reforms, innovative budgeting approaches have been adopted by the government to enhance fiscal management and strategic allocation of resources. One of these is the zero-based budgeting, which this financial year, we should not have any excuse why we cannot adopt zero-based budgeting. We piloted it in the last financial year. Now this financial year, the 2026-27, we must now actualize full implementation of zero-based budgeting. 2025-26, there were excuses. Now 26-27, there will be no excuses. So MDS should note that each of the program will compete for funding on an equal basis, forcing elimination of inefficiencies, duplications, and misallocation of resources. So this time there will be competition for resources. You must justify the resources that you are requesting from your sector working groups. In recognition that many challenges transcend sector boundaries, we will promote intersectoral collaboration to develop integrated solutions. We cannot afford to have different arms of government working in silos on the same problem. MDS are therefore required to identify and eliminate overlapping functions and propose joint programs that deliver greater impact at a lower cost. So we are not going to entertain any more overlapping functions between or among MDS. You must identify them and eliminate them for a seamless and smooth implementation of our program. We are running one government, we are not running many governments. So we must avoid working in silos. Something that I need to emphasize on is public participation. It remains a cornerstone of our fiscal policy. We are committed to fostering a participatory approach, engaging stakeholders at all levels, and ensuring their inputs influence budget decisions. Treasury has already been leading from the front, and we are even going to do better in 2026-27 in terms of engaging Kenyans in budget process and budget implementation. And therefore, MDAs, you have a responsibility to engage Kenyans. We must avoid the culture of thinking that we know what is good for Kenyans. We must allow Kenyans to participate in the budget-making process to decide where their resources should be allocated to. And so, all your requests will be subjected to that test, public participation. If you are not conducting public participation, I'm sorry, you may not get the resources that you are requesting from the National Treasury. It is essential to proactively identify and involve all key stakeholders, document their contributions, and clearly illustrate how their feedback has influenced the fiscal budget proposal. So all the proposals that you'll be making, you have a responsibility to demonstrate how the feedback that you've got from Kenyans is influencing that budget proposal. This approach will ensure transparency. It will also enforce inclusivity and accountability, thereby strengthening the integrity of the decision-making process and fostering trust among all parties involved. I strongly encourage all accounting officers and sector working groups to view this process not merely as a procedural requirement, but as a fundamental aspect of sound governance. So before I conclude, I wanted to mention a few things. Then I will come back to make my conclusion. Listening to the PS Chris Kipto, and P.S. Makoha, you will realize that we still have a long way to go to realize economic stability in this country. But I must also say that we have made some very good progress, that if we work together as a country, then we will realize economic stability in this country in the shortest time that we never imagined. We only need first to love our country and believe in our country. Sometimes when I listen to people make their contributions, I listen a lot also to TV talk shows. I also read newspaper and I see people's opinions. And I respect their opinions. But I think we also need to acknowledge and accept that a lot has happened even in the past 1 year. Let me just mention a few things. You'll remember that in 2022, we had inflation rate at an unimaginable percentages, 9.6%. Yesterday, I saw someone write that inflation has gone down because we rebased our economy. I remember when we rebased our economy last, was several years back. And we haven't rebased our economy since that time. So these are likes for likes. So 9.6 has come down to 4.1. To me, clearly, that also reflects a reduction in cost of living. Because Chris gave you figures and analysis, and we have them. The cost of the basic commodities in 2023 and 2025. But even if you go back to 2022, it was even worse. So coming from 2022, end of 2022 to 2023, most of the basic commodities coming to 2025 their prices have gone down. From the basic, which is the maize flour, fuel, sugar, we have the data. Cost of living is not determined in political rallies. Cost of living will not be determined in churches. Cost of living is determined by real data collected, collated, and disseminated. And the data is there. If the cost of a 2-kilogram packet of maize flour was 218 in 2022, you cannot change it to 105. And if it is today 176 or 184, you cannot change it to 100. So these are real data. That is the cost of living. Cost of living is about cost of basic commodities. And the statistics are there. And I don't think there is anyone who can dispute that. And if you want to know that that is the reality, early 2023, when we really felt that the cost of basic commodities could not be afforded by ordinary people, we had sufurias on our heads. Today, how many people are in the streets with the sufurias on their heads? I don't see them. It means now the cost of what was being cooked by sufuria has gone down. So that is what I'm saying in a nutshell. There is another point that I want to mention. Allow me to just open the page where it is. The Kenya's economic outlook has been facing challenges mostly as a result of debt payment and debt servicing cost. That's a fact. You have been informed that now we are consuming about 48% of our ordinary revenue is going into servicing our debts in terms of interests. That is not sustainable. And we have recognized that as a risk area. However, I want to tell you that the government has also done a lot to make sure that we reduce the debt risks that was facing this country, or has been facing this country. Early last year, there was panic in our economy. The panic was that we were likely to default on paying our debt, meeting our debt obligation. There was a $2 billion Eurobond coming to maturity by June and was supposed to be a bullet payment without any plan at all to pay it. And therefore there was a panic early in the year. The shilling lost ground, almost 165 to the dollar. But because of what the government did then, and what we have continued to do in terms of managing our liability and the debts, first, the shilling appreciated now to around 129.2 to the dollar, and has stayed around 128 to 130 for over 1 year. I hear some people say, is this real? The reality is, it is real. If you want to know that it is real, look at the forex reserves. You see, the shilling would lose ground when there is a threat to the reserves that we have in the country. And our reserves are at 5.2 months of import cover, up from 3.8 a year ago, and up from 2.3 months of import cover in 2022, when this administration is no longer new. But when this administration came into office, we had forex reserve to import cover of less than 3 months, which is the minimum requirement. Today, we have the 5.2. And that clearly demonstrates. Another reason why you are seeing us doing relatively well is because our exports. There is something that has happened in our exports, especially the coffee and horticulture. We are exporting more. Exports grew at 7.7%. That growth has narrowed the current account balance from 2.6% of GDP in 2022 to 1.3% now. That is halving the deficit, reducing the deficit by half. What has that done to us? Plus the diaspora remittances, and plus the fact that we were able early this year to foresee and project that there will be a Eurobond falling due for payment in 2027 May, that we must deal with it early so that we don't create another panic in the economy. We did that early. We have eliminated the risk. And we were very timely. In fact, most countries are wondering. When I meet with my colleagues, they are saying, how did you foresee this? The moment we went into the market and managed our 2027 liability, the markets have closed. If we delayed even for a month, we wouldn't have succeeded. So there is something positive, something progressive that is happening, which cannot be done in the streets. It is done by clear and strategic thinking. And that is why S&P last Friday upgraded us. These are not people who just upgrade you because they like you. These are people who have considered all the factors, and they give reasons why they have upgraded Kenya from B- to B plain, if you want, or if you like, with a positive outlook. Why did they do that? They have cited, first, improved current account balance, two, which is informed by exports and diaspora remittances, and three, they have said clearly and categorically that the government's decision early this year to liability manage the Eurobond that was falling due in 2027 has given Kenya a positive outlook. And can't you see that as a positive for this government? That is positive. And I want to repeat, that is something you don't do in political rallies. That is something you can never do in church. That is something that you do by pragmatically thinking and progressive mind to forecast and project what is likely to create a risk in the economy. Let me move quickly. So I have mentioned, now look at the lending rates, and I will tie the lending rates to the government borrowing rates. 1 year ago, the 91-day Treasury bill was trading at 16%. For government to access to access funds by issuance of 91-day Treasury bill, we had to offer 16% as interest. Last Thursday, it was at exactly 8%. 50% of what was there 1 year ago. And even the 182-day Treasury bill is at 8.07% last Thursday. This Thursday, it may even come down below 8%. Now, that has done something. One, it has also helped in reducing the lending rates to the private sector. In November 2024, the average rate was 17.2. July this year, it is at 15.3. And this, you can see, has effect in the private sector, where the credit uptake had declined to negative 2.9%. It has now gone to 3.3%, and we expect it to rise. Those are the economic fundamentals that would help the economy grow. It is not about fights in the streets. It's not about fights in funerals. It is about what you do to help the economy pick up. I think I'm just remaining with one or two things to mention, and I finish. We have, because of the tightening fiscal space, we have also decided to look at other innovative ways of financing our budget and financing infrastructure. One of them is the PPP programs. I want MDS to embrace PPP. Before you ask us for extra budgetary allocation, exhaust the possibilities of raising funds through PPP, especially commercially viable projects. We now have Rironi Mau Summit in the pipeline, progressing well. I am sure it will be concluded soon. That will be a major infrastructure project in this country. The other one that I would mention, and my PS visited it recently, that is Galana Kulalu, is in progress under PPP. We have a number under the energy sector, and I want to encourage all MDAs, including even county governments, come up with projects that can be funded through PPP programs. We are also, I will not talk much about securitization and privatization. Privatization is not selling state assets. It is releasing some shares and retaining some to allow for private sector participation. Because private sector participation in commercially viable state-owned enterprises would have immense benefits, one of which is to improve efficiency and allow for more access to capital, and reduces bureaucracy. I will tell you, just the other day, I had an issue with Kenya Pipeline, which we want to privatize. And the issue was this, that Kenya Pipeline has had a system that they are using for procurement. It is an electronic system, but because we have given instruction to all government ministries, departments, and agencies, and state corporations, they have now to abandon that system and get into e-procurement. However, this is a company that is out there that we want to sell shares on. And once we sell the shares, they will go back to another system, which is not a government system. But they cannot do that because they need approval. So they have to come all the way to the Treasury for approval. That is the kind of bureaucracy that we don't need. And you know, right now, they need to procure what is going to help them to service the supplies to Uganda. The more they delay in making that decision, we are likely to lose that market. So you need a faster decision-making in such a company. You cannot realize it with the government bureaucracies. We need to face it. So you need some of these state-owned enterprises which are commercially viable. We need to release some of the shares to the private sector. We will even be deepening the capital market. Nairobi Securities Exchange will perform better with more IPOs, with more companies being released. So let us not resist, let us not be complacent. Just because this is the way we have been doing things, we want to be very comfortable. Because KPC is making some 4 billion every year. Yet it can make even 15 billion. So we want to retain our 4 billion, 3 billion, which is 100%. What if it makes 15 billion and we have only 40% shareholding? That will be 6 billion to the exchequer in terms of dividend. So that is my request, that we as a country embrace new thinking, fresh thinking. Lastly, we are employing a number of reforms. And these reforms are meant to cut on expenditure, because there is wastage in government. I can see the Auditor General is here. I had not recognized her. Nancy is here. Her books are full of audit queries around expenditure. And we know what we are doing when it comes to procurement. You know what you people do in your offices. You know how your procurement people pluck papers from documents that are submitted by suppliers. And then in evaluation, you tell them you are not compliant. You are not tax compliant. Information you can even get from KRA yourself. So someone has quoted 1 billion less, but is denied opportunity to do business with government because you want another person to win that tender. And so you will manipulate the documents. You will pluck those papers. That is what we are trying to cure with e-procurement. And this e-procurement, you people must implement it. This resistance I'm seeing, you will just have to stop it. Oh, it is not working. Gee, what? I am not going to buy that narrative. I know many people are frustrating this system. We are not going to allow it. You better embrace the system and get going. Otherwise, you will not procure. Hiyo ni ukweli. We will save close to 200 billion if we implement this system. Already, we have registered suppliers of 7,286 by 25th of August. We are doing weekly training to suppliers every Thursday on webinars to these suppliers. Let me give you the statistics. We were targeting to train 840 for state departments. We have trained 804. That is 95% achievement. So if kama umebaki hapo nje, remember you are just in the 5%. County executive and assemblies was 715. We have trained 700, 98%. Only 15 have not been trained. State corporations was 1,600. We have trained 844. This one is low at 53%. And state corporations webinar, we were to train 6,400. We have trained 3,297, 51%. Those who have not been trained, please get to the training. As we speak, what we are doing right now is pulling budget from IFMIS to EGP system. Head of procurement to create all organization users. We are going to embark on preparation and approval of the annual procurement and disposal plans. That will be done. So we must integrate budget and requisitions. Integration with IFMIS is complete. So if this has not happened, start it. Commitment of POs and payments, you should start that system. Tomorrow, I'm going to chair a meeting where the service provider will be present. We are going to deal with all those teething problems, all those challenges. Any new system must face challenges. So don't use that as an excuse to kill this initiative. You will not kill it. So you better adopt. Align yourself. Accounting officers, I hope you are listening to me. Align yourself with e-procurement. There will be no excuses. It's going to help this country, and I'm not going to let this country down by dropping the ball on this one. Even on integrating the payroll system, counties are still resisting. County executives. I want to tell them and my team, you better listen. This thing of saying that we are only going to start with MDAs and then county assemblies as we wait for executives, county executives to be ready. When will they be ready? There is no justification. They must also be onboarded. We must integrate the payroll system. This idea of ghost workers, we must find a way of eliminating ghost workers. You go to counties, there are parallel payroll systems. Some manual, some casual, what? To the extent the salaries that are paid in counties are over 50%. Some